Today, I wanted to talk to you about what happens when the narcissist in your life feels like they've lost control over you or other people in their lives. Now, if you notice, we said feels like they've lost control over you. That's because I want to get it up front right now that regardless of what they think or how it feels, narcissists have never had any control over you or anybody. This is an illusion. It's a fantasy of narcissists perpetrated by their constant attempts to dominate everything and driven by their internal feelings of powerlessness and lack of agency over their own lives. When someone feels the level of powerlessness that pathologically narcissistic people do, they feel controlled by external forces and other people. People who feel powerless and believe that others hold all the power tend to feel controlled by that and by those other people. This is part of having what's called an external locus of control, meaning the person believes that their actions, choices, feelings, and the outcomes of situations are created or decided by things outside of themselves and their control, external forces, in other words. For example, if someone with an external locus of control wins a game, they might believe it's due to luck or some other external force that is outside of their control. They don't believe they themselves really had any input in the outcome because they don't feel like they have any control or agency over anything. This is one reason that therapeutic outcomes for pathological narcissism are so poor, for example. It's pretty difficult to make somebody understand that changing their behavior or mindsets has any value or benefit, or to get them to even look at these things at all when they genuinely believe these things have nothing to do with any of their problems or the outcomes that they're experiencing at all. If you've lived with a narcissist long enough, you've likely even heard them say this kind of thing. They legitimately do believe that external forces are the problem. With narcissists, so often these external forces are other people. Narcissists feel very controlled by other people because they don't have any power in their own lives. They've given it all away. They are stuck in the mindset of small children whose lives are dictated by adults. Children have no real agency or power over their lives. They are bound by what adults decide for them to a very large degree. If their mother moves to California from New York, they have to go to California whether they would personally have chosen to do that or not. In a similar way, narcissists feel controlled by the actions, beliefs, thoughts, opinions, and feelings of other people. This is why it's so common for them to blame their behavior on other people or to come out with some variant of, you made me do that, and or it's not my fault when asked to take accountability for something that they've done. Some of this is just justification and blame shifting, but some of it is because deep down, they don't feel that they have power or control over anything, including themselves. I didn't lose my job because of me. This relationship is not ending because of me. I didn't lose my house because of me. Nothing happened because of me. We can see this very clearly in the way that they try to control other people. People who don't feel powerless don't do that. They don't need to. For an example that maybe hits a little closer to home, look at your own behavior when dealing with the narcissist in your life. You likely did or do many things that are designed to control or manage this person's behavior and their reactions, even if you didn't realize that before now. You did that because you felt powerless to stop or change the situation yourself. So naturally, you began trying to control the source of the problem. Narcissists are essentially doing the same thing. They think other people are the problem, which is why these relationships become such toxic power struggles so much of the time. The difference here is the narcissist is trying to control other people because they can't control themselves. People around narcissists are usually just trying to avoid abuse and catastrophes being perpetrated by a person who engages in very little self-control at all. In the end, though, neither one of these things are healthy or okay, and more importantly even than that, they don't work. We cannot control other people, which is why narcissists are always so stressed out about all these things and what other people think about them and what other people believe about them and what is everybody going to do. They need people to see them a certain way so that people will behave a certain way toward them and do certain things. It's very difficult to maintain that, and it's extremely important that they be able to do that. Their survival is predicated on it to a very large degree. Therefore, this is a source of significant stress for narcissists. When they cannot control this anymore, when they lose whatever power they believe they had over other people, this communicates things to them that are very threatening and destabilizing. Narcissists are operating under the infantile mechanism that if their needs are not recognized by the people around them, they'll die or some other horrible thing is going to happen to them. This is the mechanism that induces babies to cry, for example, so that they can communicate their needs to their caregivers because they can't manage or address these needs themselves. Caregivers react to that because, first of all, of course, they ostensibly care about the baby's needs, but it's also largely to stop the crying. Most people find it very distressing when they cannot do that. And this is not just because they're worried about the baby. It's because due to how most human brains are wired, they find the sound of the baby crying very difficult to tolerate. Babies feel acute distress when their cries are not responded consistently, and they should, because if we as adults do not respond to their needs, they'll die. If you don't feed your baby will die. That is what the crying mechanism does and why our brains are wired to react to it the way that they are. It helps ensure the survival of the baby and therefore our species. When people learn to self-soothe, when they mature enough to address their own needs themselves, they leave that mechanism behind. For narcissists, this does not seem to happen correctly. They're not the only people that happens to, but it does happen to them. They are still operating according to this infantile mechanism that dictates others need to respond to their needs and react to them, or they're in danger, they're not safe. When this does not happen, when they don't get that response, when they don't get that reaction, they experience profound distress because it signals danger to them. This is part of the very common narcissistic need to overreact, to create and provoke drama, to be the only thing that matters in any situation, many other things. It's important to understand this is much more than just being mad because they're not the center of attention or being in a huff because people are quote unquote ignoring them. It signals to them that they don't matter. And if you don't matter, you're not safe, because if no one cares about you, they're not going to care about your needs. Therefore, they won't fulfill them. And now what's going to happen to you? You have no power, no ability to affect anything. Certainly, you can't address your own needs yourself. What else can you do but try harder to get that response from other people, to get that reaction? And that is what they do. It's important to remember that this does not excuse a narcissist's behavior in any way. As sad as some people might feel that this is, narcissists are not children. They are grown adults, and this is their responsibility to address however they can do that. At no point is it ever acceptable for them to just inflict their untreated selves on other people because they've decided they want relationships with others and they feel that they're just entitled to have that without doing anything to ensure that they can show up in these relationships in healthy adult ways, to ensure that they're not actively and continuously harming people with their problems and their behavior. It also doesn't somehow mean that you are responsible for fulfilling their needs. Again, these are not children. They have to do this for themselves, and if they can't, then they can't. As anyone who has dealt with a narcissist knows, other people cannot do these things for them. It doesn't work. They don't feel safe. They don't feel loved. They don't feel better. It doesn't work. So adult people not being able to do this for themselves does not mean this is somehow now somebody else's responsibility. That is a codependent mindset that needs to be let go of and released. It's harmful to you, and it also does not help them in any way because it actually validates their distorted belief systems and cognitive distortions. It, in fact, perpetuates the narcissist's belief that not only is it acceptable for them to require this from other adults, but that it's even somehow possible for other adults to manage and regulate the narcissist's emotions for them. It genuinely is not possible for somebody to do that. You cannot stop them from believing that, of course, but you can definitely stop yourself from enabling and perpetuating and participating in it. So even though none of this excuses their behavior, understanding these things does help with understanding the things that they do and why things go the way that they go when you're dealing with this kind of person. No matter how the distress shows up in their reactions, what we're discussing, is a big part of the core of it. Understanding this helps to explain how entrenched and severe this is as well. These fears and these behaviors and these things have been a thing for this person for a very, very long time, likely since their infancy, and it's not something you can address in the context of a relationship. It is much deeper than that, and understanding this helps people to stop trying to address it in the context of the relationship, regardless of the type of relationship, because you can't, and trying only tends to make things worse. When narcissists feel that they've lost power over other people, their reaction to this is often to redouble their efforts to try to regain that power and control that they think they have. They may do this through tantrums, hysteria, threats, guilt, silence, everything they usually do. If these things don't work to make them feel more secure, and as if they've been able to bring that situation or that person back under their control, they may escalate their behavior and perhaps even introduce new behaviors that follow the pattern of escalation. Because the problem is within them, whatever small sense of immediate security they may glean from these controlling behaviors does not last, which is one reason we generally see an overall pattern of escalation, even if the behaviors do bring about the results that they're initially looking for. What they are trying to address is actually inside of them, and it has nothing to do with the other person or other people at all. Therefore, controlling other people does not make them feel better in any real way. So, in trying to address the issue, mistakenly believing that the solution is in things outside of themselves, they escalate their controlling and dominating behaviors, trying to make themselves feel better. As this gradual escalation occurs, even when it does get the results that they're looking for, the pattern is generally given a violent shove in severity if the narcissist feels like it's not working. For example, if screaming does not bring about capitulation in the other person and therefore a feeling of reestablished security for the narcissist, they might start throwing things. If throwing things or breaking things does not cause this person to submit and do what they want, they might engage in more blatant physical intimidation, getting in your face, punching holes in the wall beside your head. If that doesn't work, they might engage in physical violence. The escalation just continues. As we covered in the episode of the show entitled Beware the Extinction Burst, when these conditioned behaviors that narcissists are engaging in stop working, there tends to be a ramping up of those behaviors, up to and including acts of violence toward themselves and or other people. Many people report this type of dramatic escalation when they are utilizing the gray rock method of non-reaction, for example. This occurs for all the reasons we just mentioned, and it also happens because narcissists have extreme difficulty regulating their emotions and their reactions to their emotions. They don't have any desire to learn either because, as we've stated, in their minds, this is your responsibility. You are making me feel this way. You are making me act this way, so you need to make it stop happening. You are the problem. If you won't do whatever is going to solve the problem, which the problem to them is how they feel, then you get what you deserve. You don't care how I feel. You don't care what I want, so I don't care how you feel. I don't care what you want. You have the power to stop this all right now, and you just won't. You get what you get. They may make absolutely no effort to control their behavior at all because they feel that they're not controlling it. You are. Many narcissists will even say things like that. The problem with this way of looking at it is that it's false. You're not controlling their behavior. They are. You're not responsible for their feelings. They are. You're not required to manage life moment by moment and make things never go wrong and never upset them so that they can function minimally as a human being, as an adult. They are responsible for that. You're not even capable of doing any of these things. Regardless of their attempts to hold you responsible for these things, you're not. You have no control over these things or how this person feels, reacts, or behaves at all. Until you recognize that, they will always be able to convince you that this is your problem to fix. It's not, and that's why you can't. Stop trying to do the impossible. Narcissists need you to believe that fixing how they feel is your responsibility because they believe that. And if you don't, they have no way to address anything at all. Remember, they have an external locus of control. Things beyond their control are controlling their feelings and causing the problem, which means the solution to this problem is also outside of themselves. That's what they believe. They feel powerless and vulnerable whenever you escape what they believe is their control over you, and that has to be fixed. The solution is not that they need to learn to manage their own lives and their own feelings, for example, so that they can stop wasting such a huge amount of energy and time on things that don't even matter and are not even true. The solution is you come back into line so that they can feel better living in this illusion that they're controlling things and everybody sees them the way that they need everybody to see them. Loss of control over their environment and the people in it equals loss of supply for narcissists. Loss of supply equals narcissistic collapse, a legitimately life-threatening situation for any human being wherein the person experiences a destruction of their concept of self, and one which pathologically narcissistic personalities are much closer to than the majority of other people because of the fragility of their manufactured identities and the complete dependence of these identities on the validation and input of other people, which is what narcissistic supply is. Narcissistic in this context means self. The input from other people supplies this person with their sense of self because they don't have a stable, cohesive sense of self of their own. Because of that, these identities cannot stand alone for any length of time. As soon as the supply, the validation and input stops, the identity, the sense of self, is in immediate danger of collapse because there's nothing holding it up. Think about those blow-up, wavy guys that you see outside of car dealership, the really colorful guys that are blowing all around. They are animated by a constant stream of air that makes them dance and wave all around. You turn the blower off and they're nothing but a piece of fabric on the ground. Without that constant input by themselves, they're nothing. It's just a shell. To understand the seriousness of the phenomenon of narcissistic collapse, it's important to understand that narcissists typically do not experience this as the loss of a false self in the sense that, like, oh no, it's just that the jig is up and now they've been seen through, the way that a person would if they were wearing a disguise that you pulled off or something like that. They experience it as the loss of the only real sense of self and self-concept that they actually have, because it is. It's like if you pulled off someone's disguise and there was nothing else there at all. No face, no identity, just nothing. Removing the disguise made them cease to exist because that's all there really was of them. Again, this is a life-threatening experience for most human beings. If you lose your sense of self, that is cataclysmic for your identity, for your personality, for you as a person. In a very real way, narcissists only exist in the minds of other people. That is the only place where they're really real to other people or themselves. The mental images that others have of them are really all there is to narcissists. And because of that, these must be controlled at all costs. The idea that the narcissist has no power over these things and is not in control of them causes an existential crisis for them, because if they have no power over these things, if they cannot control and manage and curate them, well then just at any moment a person could have some other idea in their head about the narcissist and then poof, there's somebody else, somebody that they cannot tolerate being, and they're stuck with that because they don't have anything else. You can see then the importance of keeping this fiction in place. Narcissists' lives literally depend on it. This is why it's so important to them to keep control over the environment and all the people in it. They are essentially non-existent without it, and they require others to play along to create the self-image that they need to see of themselves. When people stop playing along, this creates a serious threat to that image. Often it does serious damage to it, at least in the narcissist's mind. They obsess over what other people will think of that and of them, what this betrayal, this mutiny means about them. They cannot accept such an affront, such a betrayal, such an insult, such damage. The illusion of themselves is so fragile that if there's any opposition to it at all, it is in danger of falling apart, of just collapsing into nothing. This is why, in so many cases, people cannot be allowed to leave the narcissist sphere of influence and just exist without being bothered. Can't have that. They have to be stalked and smeared and harassed and whatever else. They have to be punished for their crime, for their attack on the narcissist. This is one of the places where you can see very clearly how narcissists do not have any understanding of other people as real and separate human beings. They just don't. Nothing can ever be about anything or anybody else. It isn't just that they don't really think that, but they're saying it anyway to be selfish and mean. No, they cannot understand that other people have their own stuff, their own thoughts, motives, brains, lives, feelings, just nothing. It's all about them. It's all about the narcissist. Everything you think, everything you feel, everything you say, everything you do, everything that happens, it's all about them somehow because they see themselves as the axis upon which their world spins. And nobody in that world has anything separate or individual at all. Nothing connected to them or that impacts them could have any other reason or motive but them. Now, that's different, for example, from someone who suffers from schizophrenia, for example, who might believe that people on TV that they don't even know are sending them messages. Or maybe they believe that they can transform into some other person or some other object or some other animal. These are referred to as bizarre delusions because these involve things that are not actually possible and therefore cannot be true. You cannot transform into a bird. Narcissists typically have what are referred to as non-bizarre delusions, meaning the delusional beliefs involve things that are actually possible, therefore they could technically be true. They're just not. And there is no actual reason or evidence to support the narcissist's belief that it is true. That's another reason we could think of it as a delusion, by the way, because it's a distorted belief or a conclusion that continues to persist even in the face of contradictory proof and evidence. When narcissists feel that they have lost control over other people, this can cause them extreme distress for all the reasons we've discussed here and others, and their reactions to that distress can vary. Some will opt to simply exit the entire situation, having concluded that the entire thing has been destroyed by the defection of that person or those people, making the situation untenable and leading to the conclusion that they're going to have to seek what they're looking for somewhere else. Others will dig their heels in and attempt to salvage whatever situation has been built around the illusion by smearing the other person or otherwise trying to control how others view the situation and therefore the narcissist, which this is the only thing that matters. Some will react by doing whatever is necessary to bring that defecting person back under their control, up to and including killing the person who has quote-unquote defected, the person who has escaped. Many domestic and family violence murders are tragic examples of this. The abuser in this situation simply cannot cope with the existential crisis that arises within them from losing power and control in this way. They cannot deal with it. The feelings are intolerable, and they often mount huge campaigns to get the other person back under control. Not necessarily back into the relationship, just back under control. This can include love bombing, threats, stalking, creating some kind of problem that the person has to come and fix, feigning serious illness, serious self-harm and suicide attempts, filing false criminal charges against that person, and many other things. If this fails, they conclude that there's only one way to stop the way that they feel. The person has not only hurt and insulted and betrayed the narcissist, they've made them afraid, and that absolutely must be punished. This is why they say that people are in the most danger from a domestic abuser, not while they're in the relationship, but when they try to leave, and especially after they already have left. This is when the abuser realizes once and for all that they cannot control this person anymore. This person is not coming back into line. That is the most dangerous time in the whole situation because it causes the most distress for these personalities and is something that the majority of them find legitimately impossible to tolerate. Now, some people might find this satisfying because, they might feel like a narcissist being distressed to this level by their exit is earned, and that's certainly understandable, but it's important to remember, too, that this can also be really, really dangerous. People who are this unstable, this volatile, and this invested in the situation can be very dangerous, especially if they believe that they have nothing left to lose. It's important to be cognizant of that because graveyards are full of people who thought that the person who ended up killing them would never actually harm them or never could. A lot of the information out there that promotes trying to trick narcissists or manipulate them or get revenge on them or beat them at their own game or whatever ignores that fact. And in situations dealing with this kind of person, this should not be ignored. It needs to be acknowledged. That's not to say we have to be totally paranoid about it and live in fear or whatever, but we do need to be cognizant of it. We need to pay attention to what's going on. We need to take it seriously whenever things seem to be escalating and things like that. It is too costly to be wrong. If you are dealing with a narcissist who is waking up to the fact that they can no longer control you, remember a few things. Number one, they never actually had any control over you or anybody. They need to believe that, which means they need you to believe that, but it's not true. It's an illusion. You always had a choice. You always had control over yourself. You always had power. And they knew that, which is why you had to be punished every time you did anything that reminded anybody of that. They couldn't have you getting it into your head that this is all just a mirage and you do have power here. But that's really how it is. That's why they react so strongly to the word no, for example. They know that if you stick to that no, there's nothing they can do. They can guilt you, they can insult you, they can harass you, they can attack you, they can beat you, they can even kill you. They can pull all their bag of tricks out, but they cannot make you buy into their BS if you refuse. They know that, and that's why they react to these things the way that they do, because it reminds them that they actually don't have control over you at all. Number two, you are not responsible for this person. Not their feelings, thoughts, beliefs, actions, choices, outcomes of situations, and how these things affect them or anything else. Again, they need to believe that, which means they need you to believe that, but it's false. It's an illusion. It's their responsibility as adult human beings to manage and address these things, just like it is for every other adult human being on the planet. Someone saying something is your responsibility does not make it true. They can think that if they want. They can be mad at you for not doing these things if they want. That does not magically make their feelings into facts. Being angry or offended or hurt or feeling any type of way doesn't make somebody right. It has nothing to do with it at all. They're still wrong if they're wrong, no matter how they feel. In this case, they're wrong. They are incorrect. And if that bothers them, that's too bad because it's still the truth. You cannot be held responsible for things that you don't have the ability to control, and you cannot control any of these things. They feel that you're controlling these things, but that's not reality. The reality is that you're not. A narcissist's feelings rule them, and you see how that turns out. Don't allow their feelings to rule you. Stick with reality. Stick with the facts. Number three, be smart and be safe. Remember what you're dealing with and what this actually means. Don't let your ego get the best of you. It's not worth it. Don't make the mistake of believing you can control the fundamentally out of control. This is a person with no limits, no empathy, no ability to understand that other people actually exist. A person whose entire self is dependent upon everyone around them agreeing with their completely distorted perceptions and narrative. A person who cannot be depended upon to be logical, to be reasonable, or to do what's in even their own best interest, let alone anybody else's best interest, especially when they're outraged and hurt and upset. Recognize this fact, accept it, and stop projecting qualities, dimensions, and abilities onto them that they don't actually have. Listen to your gut, pay attention to what's going on, and take threats or evidence of any escalation seriously. Sometimes these personalities are definitely just full of hot air, and sometimes they're not. It's better to be safe than sorry.